Hey everybody, I am the company's expert, and today we're going to talk about human resources, HR. That's right, we're going to talk about what it is and how it affects running a business, whether that business is very small, like a side hustle for an individual, or very large, like a multi-million-dollar multinational corporation. And I've done both and a bunch of things in between, so I feel I can speak to this. We're going to talk about what human resources is, its pros and cons, and also the pros and cons, at least generally speaking, of the people who choose to specialize in HR. So let's dive in. Now, what is human resources? Well, basically, human resources is everything that deals with employees, all things employee related. Now, you might think that it's all things people related, but that's not actually true. If those people happen to be customers, for example, that's handled mainly by the marketing department. Including things like public relations. But if it deals with employees, then that falls under the human resources department. Traditionally, human resources, it's not called this by accident. It treats people like resources. That was the original idea of this. And this came into effect 70 years ago and earlier. And the idea was that we're going to treat people just like any other resource. You see, the way a business works is that you add several things to the mix and it produces an output. Okay, the output is usually a product or service that you can sell, but to get that, you need to add several things. And a lot of them are resources of different kinds. For example, raw materials would be one of the things you would add, and then perhaps energy, and then perhaps real estate in the form of office space or factory space, and then finally, you would add the human resources, the people, okay? And they would be physical people, like that can do labor, and also they would possess skills and things like that. But they're just one of the resources that you need to produce an output. And so as a result, human resources treats people like resources, not as human beings, but as objects, okay? That was traditionally the thinking on this. Now, you can see this when you read in the news that a company has laid off some of its workforce because its quarterly profits were down, right? In the same way that you would purchase less inventory for your upcoming production batch to maximize profitability, you might lay off some of your people also to maximize profitability. Are you treating them like human beings? No, you're treating them like resources, like objects, like raw materials, okay? And that was the traditional thinking of human resources and how it got its name. Now, human resources in a business, it does things like hiring and firing, training of employees, and it manages all the legal requirements related to having employees, okay? It also deals with other employee functions like succession planning and also discipline procedures too. Now, what are the advantages of human resources? What are the advantages of having a human resource individual or organization assisting you in your business? Well, I'm not sure if you ever heard the expression, no one's irreplaceable. Okay, that's something that's been often said, no one's irreplaceable. Well, the big advantage of human resources is that it takes the risk out of the people function of your company, okay? It makes sure that you're doing everything properly, that you're treating everyone properly, you're complying with all legislation. And there's a lot of complicated legislation. There's employee standards, employment standards, there's human resource laws, there's human rights laws, there's all kinds of other things. And so there's rules on just about everything you could ever imagine doing with an employee. And human resources, it makes sure that you comply with all those, and it takes the risk out of the people side. So it definitely adds something to your business. However, on the cons side, okay, human resources is a very schizophrenic field of study because, as I mentioned, traditionally they treat people like objects. And this is totally at odds with some modern thinking of how you treat people. And as you can imagine, the modern way of treating people is that you treat people, like human beings. They have feelings, they have perceptions, they have motivations, and they have aspirations. And that doesn't fit into the traditional view of human resources. Instead, we have to incorporate elements of psychology and sociology. And so as a result, these two worlds completely clash. And anyone who's worked in a large organization for any length of time probably knows what I'm talking about here. One moment, they treat you like a human being. They try to motivate you. They try to get you to buy in and believe in certain values and principles. But then the next moment, they treat you in a very formal, very impersonal way, like they're treating you like an object. And it leads to a very sociopathic, I don't know what the word would be, sociopathy, sociopathic way of dealing with people that tends to undermine itself. And that's one of the big cons of human resources. It can't make up its mind which of these two models is the one to go with. And so it keeps switching back between them, and as a result, achieves some pretty poor results. So that's the pros and cons of human resources as a whole. Let's talk about the people, the individuals who specialize in human resources. They have some pros and cons too, generally speaking. And under the pros side, having these people on your team brings some advantages. As I said before, they make sure that everything is done legally. They make sure everything is done properly. And if you don't have a background in HR, this can be quite complicated. Even just being familiar with all the laws and regulations is bad enough. But you try and develop policies that you try to enforce, that can be quite challenging and quite complicated. So having a human resources person on your team definitely has advantages. However, I gotta say this, and I'm speaking generally here. In my experience, whether I'm working in large multinational corporations or in small business or in startups and everything in between, my experience has been that the people who choose to specialize in human resources, that is to say, that they have chosen to make their career at dealing with people, okay, are surprisingly bad at dealing with people. And I think this is because having great communication skills and great people skills are not really a prerequisite to working in HR. And it shows, because one would think that people who would want to work with people, that they would be good at working with people and dealing with people, but they're not, generally speaking. And this, once again, can undermine the work that they do. So I feel that, I might be calling out some bad elements here, but these elements, these negative elements, these are opportunities for people to come in and make real improvements to how the human resource function works. There's a tremendous amount of improvement that's there for the taking, for the people who can come in and solve these problems, or at least address them partially. So there's a lot of efficiencies to be gained here. So it's a very, very fascinating topic that I think has a lot of potential. So thank you very much for listening this long. You guys are awesome. I hope you will join me for the rest of this series, where I cover every area, or at least every major area of business, and talk about how it relates to business as a whole. Thank you very much. You guys are awesome. Take care.